Hi everyone, Anna from girlsandkey.com. We do videos about poetry for you guys. Now today we have a very special guest. Actually, I'm a guest in her house, Anne Casey, poet Anne Casey, and we're going to be talking about our new book club. So that's exciting. Hey everyone, so today we've got a very special episode. It's the launch of our Girls on Key book club, Monday book club, and I'm with poet Anne Casey in Sydney. And so we're going to talk to you about her book, Where the Lost Things Go. And I've been really delving into it, and it's just, I don't have many words for it right now, but I will have some words about it in a minute, because I've been thinking a lot about it on the train. I've had time from Newcastle to think about this incredible work, and the scope of it is just astounding. So yeah, and you guys get to hear a reading from her as well, which is really special, and I hope that you appreciate the awesomeness of being able to sit here with Anne. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, so before we do our interview, I just want to talk about a new concept that we're going to be doing with Girls on Key on a Monday that you can look forward to. And what it's going to be, we're going to have a book club. Every Monday we're going to have an interview or a Skype interview with a poet talking about their book. They're going to do a reading. And what you guys can do is, in the description, there's going to be a little form that you can fill out. If you want to have a book club in your area, then you can select one of the books from one of our beautiful poets, and we will do a subscription where you can get all those books from us for your club, and you can interact, and we can ask questions, and we might even be able to put questions to the poet ahead of time in our next one. So we've got Sharifa Tartusi, we've got a few other interviews coming up, so that's very exciting. And so check out all the links in the description. You'll be able to see if you're interested in having a book club, and these will be every Monday to look forward to. So that's great, just so that you guys know about that. And I'm going to just read a little bit about Anne, just so you can sort of get the idea of who I'm sitting with, because she really is fabulous, and I've gotten to know her through Sydney Girls on Key chapter, and we're just so privileged to have her there as a part of that community. So we'll do a reading in a moment, but I'll just read a little bit about Anne. So Anne's originally from the west of Ireland. She lives in Sydney, Australia, a beautiful area. And she's had a 25-year award-winning career. She's worked as a business journalist, a magazine editor, corporate and government communications director, a legal author, and an editor. So the scope of her work is just amazing, and that's what kind of colours her work too, you'll see in a moment. Anne is the co-editor of Other Terrain and Backstory literary journals from Swinburne University. Her writing and poetry rank in the Irish Times newspaper's most read. So you can have a look at a lot of stuff online, is that right? You'll be able to find through the Irish Times. Fantastic. And a lot of you might be watching from Ireland. Please drop us a note in the comments to us, and we'll interact with you. And we're hoping to have a connection with Ireland soon. Thanks to some of the contacts with Anne, so I appreciate that. Thank you. So Anne's poems feature internationally in newspapers, magazines, journals, books, broadcasts, podcasts, and major art exhibitions. I know that you're involved in an art exhibition in Newcastle, in my area, not that long ago. In 2017, Salmon Poetry published her debut poetry collection, which we hold right here, and which is also going to be for sale in the Girls on Key bookshop, which you can also see in the link. Plug. She won the 2017 Glenn Phillips Novice Writer Award and had a poem commended in the Bangor 40 Words competition 2018. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Anne has been shortlisted for the Court International Poetry Prize, Iwear Books Poetry Prize, Bedford International Writing Competition, and Bangor Annual Poetry Competition, among others. So as you can see, there's a real amazing background in publication and awards, and so now we're going to switch over and have a reading from Anne. So that's something to really look forward to. Let's do that.
Thank you so much, Anna, for that beautiful introduction and for this amazing opportunity. I love the book club idea, and Anna is such a powerhouse for poetry in Australia. I'm really thrilled to be involved. Thank you. So I'm going to read a few poems from my book, Where the Lost Things Go, which was published in 2017 by Salmon Poetry in Ireland. The first poem is the title poem from the book, and it's called Where the Lost Things Go. We sat upon a golden bough, my little bird and I. Indivisibly apart, we dived into the sky, and to the purple-hearted dark, an ocean, we did cry. for all the lost things gathered there in rooms beyond the eye, the eye, the eye, the eye. Second poem is called In Memoriam 1. It's part of a sequence called In Memoriam, and this one is called Made in Milltown Malbay. Milltown Malbay is the place I come from in the west of Ireland. Bright sparks drift and chase like fireflies in the smoky haze. White-hot rod dashes headlong into waiting pale, spewing acrid clouds that catch the throat. A nervous whinny calmed by a steadying calm. The air a jangle with the clang and clink and rasp. I am aghast. Hidden, forbidden. Spotted, hunted, paradise lost, racing down Main Street, heart hammering fast as my tiny feet. Up the lane, senses searing, heart ablaze. Too young yet to reason out this magnificent labor, rendering artful craft from crude resource. Half a lifetime later, half a world away, transfixed in that memory, I realized that I too was forged in that lost place. This next poem is about my dear beloved departed mum. I hope I can get through it in one piece. I never have so far. It's called In Memoriam to the Draper. The town is dead, nothing but the wind howling down Main Street and a calf bawling outside the fiddlers. My mother's words, not mine, in a letter kept in a drawer these long years. She had a way with words, my mother. That's why they came, the faithful of her following, leaning into her over the counter for an encouraging word or the promise of a novena. Long before we had local radio, our town had my mother, harbinger of the death notices and the funeral arrangements, bestower of colloquial wisdom, bearer of news on all things, great and small. Who was home and who hadn't come, who had got the civil service job and by what bit of pull. The councillor's niece, smug in her new navy suit, oblivious to the circulating countersuit. Would you ever think of coming home? Her words would catch me unawares, lips poised at the edge of a steaming mug, igniting a spitfire of resentment each time, then draping me for days. I'd wear it like a horsehair shirt all the way back, until the sunshine and the hustle had worn it threadbare, this extra bit of baggage in every emigrant's case, their mother's broken heart. I never thought to ask her, would you want me to? So I could look out at the rain circumnavigating the empty street and shiver at the wind whipping in under the door. I don't miss that question now on my annual pilgrimage home. My father never asks it. Like me, I know he feels it, hanging in the air alongside her absence. I miss my mother and her way with words. So this next poem is also in the In Memoriam series. It's In Memoriam 9 and it's called Spilt Milk. And it celebrates a tradition of making brown bread in Ireland and also a very special relationship from my childhood. Spilt milk. The smell of turning milk sitting on a sunlit windowsill in an earthen jug, waiting to be poured into the softly expectant flour. The plump curds squishing up between her knowing fingers, a smile curling at the corners of her gently sagging cheeks, a crinkle in her eyes as she nods for me to lift the heavy jug, the wobbly splosh of its thickened load, and away again with those practiced hands, lightly circling and scooping, until the lumpy mess is miraculously transformed and she marks it with a cross. After all the white clouds settle, bare oak wiped, flagstones swept, the air aloft with insides melting promise, we sit together, 70 years apart but thick as thieves, never guessing how I would later let her down. That awful moment when my father came home so quiet and told us she's gone. My heart rent at the length since I'd seen her, with just a wall between us. The smell of slightly souring milk now forever inseparable from the belly-flipping churn of my guilt. And this next poem takes us to Australia and my love of the native bush here. I'm very lucky to live at the edge of a reserve and to be able to go walking in it every day. And that's my wish, to be part of it someday. So here we are. Days like today. I am not old, but I am worn down and frayed at the edges. And I wonder, at what age will I say, take me away, let me shed my skin, release all my atoms, let them fall apart, still sparking. Show me the place where they can separate and stop their spinning, diffuse, drift off, sink into the moist earth, seep into the pulsing womb where bandicoots probe while we sleep. Soiled apple snouts carrying bits of me away under the dark branches, glinting with the watchful eyes of possums, strung with the spectres of escaped cicadas. Show me where there will be no more aching bones and world weariness, where I can gladly give up my ghost. And continuing with the Australian theme, this is a micropoem. It's called A Stir. Don't blink, you'll miss it. A stir. Parched bark flakes from a sun-baked trunk. A chrysalis wakes. And another micropoem on the same theme. The Lady Angopera. Golden limbs stretching in the warm sun, winter garb strewn about her feet. And that takes us to Palm Cove Parade, a cheekier kind of Australian bush life. Palm Cove Parade, marching past the wedding couple, simpering and struggling in the sand for their troupe of photographers who outnumber their guests. Owl-eyed, straw-legged, sleek-headed, swanning down the main drag, stopping traffic like a flurry of supermodels. Animal awareness set on high, observing their observers, alongside the knots of legs and the muslin-draped pram. Skirting the flapping toddler, necks braced, elbows akimbo, stone curlews ready to cast themselves into the sodden late afternoon air. And then circling back, this poem is deeply personal to me, and I will probably get a chance to explain it later talking to Anna. It's called Between Ebb and Flow. Mist rolls off moss-green hills where wind-wild ponies thunder, manes flying as they chase their seaward brothers, locked in eternal contest on this deserted grey mile. Past the little stone churchyard, long forgotten graves spilling stones onto the sodden bog. a soft snore from behind. My 2 angels sleeping, 13,000 miles from all they have ever known, running our own race to make the best of spaces like this. A rainbow rises along the horizon, and I recognize her, come from my mother, locked in her own immortal struggle. The sister returned, so I know it won't be long now. And I cry a little at the unbearable beauty of these diastoles when we are all suspended here in a heartbeat between heaven and earth. And finally, come and find me. I'm harking back to where I come from in the west of Ireland. Come and find me where wailing walls of moss-rolled stone, slowly yielding to a centuried crusade, cling with smoke of long-gone bog fires, now forever married with the drifting sea mist, lifting over impossibly green fields, clutching ancient secrets, drop sharply off to pitching shale where swarming gulls rise with the lagging tide, running the gusts, plunging with the lulls to swoop and pull a glistening haul under the flagging watch of a waterlogged tower, marking the ethereal line between sky and sea, and spectral hills loom long past muted islands, still harboring a shipwrecked shore. Come and find me in the dying light, where a cormorant calls unanswered, shallow over his own ghost.
Thank you so much for your reading, Anne. It was just gorgeous, really. And I was sitting off camera and felt like clapping, but I refrained.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm sure that you as an audience have really appreciated being able to have that reading with Anne. So, and if you're ever in Sydney and you come to Girls on Key chapter, you might get a chance to hear Anne there as well and connect with her. So
Hopefully.
that's something to look forward to if you're interested. So we're going to do a little bit of an interview now, and I just want to talk about how the book impacted me and my kind of thoughts on it, and then we'll ask some questions. And I was really blown away by the scope of this book, and I think I mentioned to you before, historically, personally, politically, just there's a very broad story and a broad scope that I gathered when I read through it, and some beautiful motifs and beautiful themes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and we can talk more about how the book's designed, because I don't know if you know, but I'm very big on design principles in writing, and one of the things in our other videos we talk about is it starts being art when it stops becoming arbitrary. And the way that you've designed it is just so beautiful, and it's not just plonking poems together. There's a lot of thought that's gone into the story and the arc, and I find that I haven't seen anything like that for a long time.
So glad you got that.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Oh, and when you as readers, when you choose this book for your book club, which I hope you will, there's so much to discover. It's like an absolute treasure trove. You know, and some books, you know, there's kind of just a little bit shallow. This is by no means, and you know, with the picture on the front, the deep water, and that's what I see. It's like there's so much depth to it and so much scope, and you could read it for a year really with your club and really just to uncover so much.
Pick through.
Yeah, and one of the things I was saying to Anne is that when I write fiction, one of the things I do is pick a character, and how they butter their toast is one way to kind of see their personality, and I was quite interested to see that in Anne's book. One of the things is butter and bread that comes through as a little motif, and just that mundane act of how do we butter our bread, and the context of breaking bread with another person, and each character, like your grandmother or you know whoever is in the stories and the poems, it brings a different context to that,
like
to
it embodies love, or
exactly, and I love that. So yeah, and I think that's all.
And also the sacred, like there was something almost sacred about the tradition of the making the brown bread.
And there's that beautiful, which is the poem of the making the bread, is a
Spilt milk.
Spilt milk poem that you read, and just that act and the love that's put into that, and that act, and then the breaking of the bread together, and that sort of
and the idea, do we do it anymore? Is it lost? You know, there are people who do.
But even in just sitting around to have a meal with another person, and
Absolutely.
it doesn't have to be.
That's right.
Sort of,
breaking
symbolic
bread
way.
symbolically.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
right. And so that was very fascinating.
Thank you.
So enough from me. We're going to hear a little bit from Anne. So the first thing I wanted to ask is if you could tell us about kind of the genesis of the book and your writing process and birthing it and how it came to sort of be. And I know that's a big question. So.
Yeah, so the starting point for Where the Lost Things Go was when a poem I wrote about my beloved late mother was published in the Irish Times newspaper. And that was the poem I read called The Draper from the In Memoriam sequence.
Beautiful.
It was my first poem to be published as an adult, and to have it in the Irish Times was, you know, an amazing thing for me. But it was also, because it was such a deeply personal poem, I was very trepidatious about how it would be, you know, what the response would be to it. I mean, as you saw, to this day, I can't read that poem without becoming quite emotional.
Me too, off camera. It was moving.
So that was in January 2016. And I really wasn't prepared for what happened. It went a bit viral after the comments section in the newspaper filled up and closed. People started hunting me down via Google and all my social media, my website, etc. And the one thing I kept hearing from people was that after their mum died, they couldn't cry until they read the poem, and then the floodgates opened. And, you know, that was such an epiphany for me, that response. I suddenly realized that it was an indication of the reach of poetry, how, you know, the written word, the spoken word, can reach across the world and connect from one heart to another to another. And that was when I really realized the transcendence of poetry and the written word. And since that moment, I guess, I read poetry and I write poetry with one intention in mind, and that is to either change or be changed by it. And I set myself this, so I think that's the amazing gift of poetry, I really do. And you know, as a writer, I set myself this challenge every time I write a poem. I want this poem to change person by the experience. Even if it's the tiniest thing of making you present for that one moment, or spurring a memory of your own, or that you find something in your life that suddenly you realize that's actually quite special. You know, we shouldn't gloss over these things.
Absolutely. And that universality, but through the specific, you know, through your specific experience and the imagery, and then that universality, someone in New Zealand could be reading it, and then that puts them into
and
to be able to.
You know, the amazing thing is now that poem is being used in book clubs in Ireland, which is such a joy.
That's fantastic.
And even it's being recited at music gigs and stuff, and I sort of think, it's still connecting people.
Isn't that gorgeous?
And that's what, like, if I could do anything with this book, it's to say, you know, it gives people a moment from ordinary life that takes us out of the ordinary. Because there's so much of that around us. And I think, you know, we're so busy and always in a screen that we don't really, unless we're reading poetry, we don't really grasp that sort of that presence in our lives. And so with that as a starting point for the book, I realized I wanted to gather more of these sort of sacred moments and capture them for other people, but also for myself. And I have to say my dad has been a real influence for me, because he's a bit of a family historian, and he's also a local historian in our local area in County Clare. And he's very much aware of this need to capture the things that are being lost and preserve memory. And so this book is also about that. And it progressed from there. I think it takes you on a journey through from childhood, through all of the sort of transformational experiences of my life, and then it loops back.
I love that. And so from your reading, just sort of to get a bit of the background behind one of the poems, maybe between Ebb and Flow, you want to tell us a bit about the background of that particular poem?
I'll try. I'll try and do this without tears. It's often hard. This is another really deeply personal poem to me. The backstory is that around the birth of my second child, my mum was very ill, and after a lot of wild goose chases, we were told the terrible news that she had pancreatic cancer. So we did the only thing we could, bottled up our 2 kids who were under 2.5 at the time, raced back to Ireland, 13,000 miles, and I stayed on in Ireland with my dad to look after mum, and my husband came back because obviously he had to work in Australia. So I won't mince words. It was absolutely the most horrific and heartbreaking time of our lives. We spent 6 months watching mum be slowly dismantled by this really horrific disease. And that's the backdrop to the poem. And the thing about it is that I was in this stunningly beautiful place in the west of Ireland. So our family home, where we were looking after her, is on a windswept beach with the Atlantic Ocean and the cliffs of Moher, and it's really beautiful. And I think that was a godsend in a way, but we were in this heavenly place going through hell. And there came a time in the heart of winter when the light out there on the edge of the sea would just melt your soul. And I had taken the boys for a drive by the sea, which I used to do to try and find some peace. And I had this really profound experience. It was quite overwhelming. And there was something about the absolute beauty we were experiencing. I realized mum was going to go, and I realized we had to let her go because the pain and everything of the reality of what she was going through, it was time to let her go. And that was a huge deal for me to have that moment, to be able to say it's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But there was also a sense of love enfolding us.
Wow.
And I felt like I had a sense of wonder. It's almost like I saw clearly for the first time in months the beauty of life and love and the cycle of life and this need to, and the connectedness of everything, the significance of what we go through and you know, what we share as human beings.
That is so profound, isn't it, in a way?
So that's in that poem.
Ooh, so you guys got that to look forward to delve into that powerful poem, which is from actual and costly experience, as they say. You know, it's not just, it's not a flippant poem by any means.
And, you know, something else I've said is, you know, in the end, really, are we the sum of all we gain from all our losses? You know, sometimes it's those hardest times that teach you really what's the most important thing in life. And I think poetry does tell us that over and over too. You know, people put so much of their human experience in poetry, and it's there for us to access if we choose to do that.
Yes, and it's almost like these mini reenactments of these precious moments.
Yes. That's right.
How precious is that? And so when you're holding this book in your hands, you can remember what, you know, just the depth of the experience that's come to the writing of those books.
But also I think, like with the Draper, it makes people feel I'm not alone in this human experience. I relate to this. This is what happened to me. You know, and that's the most amazing connecting force of the written word.
What a privilege,
especially poetry.
You know, as a poet to have that opportunity. It's just,
I think it's
kind of, the mind boggles a little bit.
But isn't it why you write? You know, that's really, it was the motivating factor for me, was that you connect people and you feel this response.
Humanity.
I love that. Right there.
And so just a little bit of a different tag. So you're from Ireland.
How can you tell?
I love your accent, it's beautiful.
And I love yours.
I don't have Talk to us a bit about how your writing has changed, you know, in Australian context and in an Irish context. How does that come to play? And I mean, obviously there's an incredibly beautiful sense of place in your book, but yeah, talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously I'm Irish, and to say that, you know, there's an Irish influence in my writing is understating it. Really, it inhabits my writing.
Yeah, it does.
And I think there's a background to the way that I write that comes from having grown up in this country, in this culture where poetry and song were just part of the roots and guts of how you lived.
Beautiful.
And, you know, stories and traditions were passed down through song and through poetry.
Yeah.
And, you know, Ireland has got a war-torn and bloody history, and poetry was used as a subversive force also. So in rebelling against the colonial masters, the Indigenous Irish people used poetry to pass on secret messages and strategies and information, and most of all, hope.
That's really interesting.
It was about trying to keep people's hope alive.
Wow. Yeah.
And so for me, in going through life, and, you know, as a child and growing up, poetry was that to me. It was like, it's full of coded messages, but it's up to you to decode it. And
I love that.
You know, it was interesting, it was fascinating, but it was important as well. It had to be an important message.
Yeah. And that mystery and that kind of
profound. Almost a treasure hunt too.
It is.
Which is really inspired me as a child. And, you know, I have to say also I'm very much influenced by my dad, and those two factors definitely influence the fact that there's political poetry in my book. It's not just a personal journey.
No.
Politics in a way is personal to me, and I sort of feel like poetry and the resistance, maybe because of my Irish roots, is a really important purpose of, you know, writers and artists in the world, is this need to respond to what's happening in the world and try and give some resistance to it, and give people hope too, that there is a way forward that isn't so dreadful and, you know.
Yeah. I'm touching on what we talked about earlier.
That's right. So, you know, in terms of the Australian influence in my work, I have been living here for 25 years. The immigrant experience and sense of displacement and dislocation is absolutely there, and certainly in this book. So that's a sort of reasonable thread through it. If I was to take an external perspective on my poetry, I'd say some of the things coming from the Australian side would be a growing openness to experimentation. I may have sort of started out in a traditional verse format, but, you know, sort of free verse, but still with some structure to it. I have to say I can be a little obsessed with concision. You know, I don't know why, but in me, there is this need to say the most you can, or to make the most impact you can with the fewest words.
Economy of words.
Yeah, so concision is a little obsession, but I also think about how the poem looks on the page, and I think I am very much influenced by Australian writers in doing that. You know, what can you imply by how the poem looks on the page, the structure, the shape of it?
I love that about page structure.
You know, how you chop the lines.
Enjambment and
enjambment.
Yeah.
And lately I've also been weaving more lyricism, I think, into my poetry.
Yeah.
Because I have written songs as well. It's another
adjunct
I don't talk about much. And, you know, some of them have been recorded in Australia and America, but no big hits.
Put the links in.
No, people might like it.
I'm sure.
So another big thing for me in terms of the Australian influence is my love of nature and the Australian bush, and I'm absolutely
looking at the bush
blessed.
right now. You guys can't see. You don't get the view that I get right now of this beautiful bush.
Yeah. So every day I go out and I live under the trees.
It's so gorgeous.
Yeah. Hear the birds. Just absolutely love it. Go for a walk every day in it, and I think that's really an inspiration to me, and it is coming through more and more. And I think you'll see more of these influences in my next book, which is coming out through Salmon Poetry in 2019.
Not long to go.
So, no, it's pretty much.
It'll go quickly.
Pretty much finished.
Excited.
So just
That's
putting the
fantastic.
final polishes to it. So
and that kind of takes us to our next question, which is really good. It's how has your work evolved since you first came to poetry as a young person? Like, what's your sort of evolution as a poet in terms of your work and the ideas that you've processed? And I mean, obviously, big life events always have a big impact on you as a person, and then as a writer.
For sure.
Yeah, talk to us about that.
So I first started writing poetry around the age of 8.
Oh wow.
I can't tell you how it started. I suppose maybe because Ireland, you're just surrounded by it. And well, actually, probably because my dad every 5 minutes quotes something from a poem.
Very influential.
Yes. So maybe that was it. But I rapidly realized the power of words to convey an idea from one mind to another. I love that. And it was just the most amazing thing. It was such a potent thing to discover as a young child. And such power at my tiny fingertips. I loved it. Very Harry Potter. So I did. I loved it. And through my teens, it was a way of really exploring the world around me and how it affected me. But I abandoned poetry for a long time due to circumstance. I just grown up in a, recession in Ireland, very much focused on getting a sensible job and earning my keep and all of that. And
common stories, isn't it?
Yeah, and I also wanted something. I had a great desire to travel always, and I wanted to have a career that afforded me that opportunity, and I did. But I still knew that I needed to do something that involved writing. So my whole career has been based around that in one way or another. And I've been very, very lucky to be able to do that as a journalist, a magazine editor, etc., and communications director. But, in over a period of a couple of decades, I probably wrote 1 to 2 poems a year. And they're all lost in notebooks and, in many moods. Actually, one of my friends who's a journalist, who we were together in Dublin many years ago, she reminds me often that I wrote a poem when we were journalists together about the new Prime Minister of Ireland, who I had interviewed for a business magazine, and I had written it on the back of a beer mat in Mulligan's pub in Fleet Street. So somewhere in the sawdust on the floor of that pub is this poem.
That's fantastic.
I don't think it was very flattering.
There's a treasure hunt for you, huh? There's a treasure hunt for you.
Not very flattering.
Historical.
Good that disappeared. I think I might be in trouble. But it was only really because my life was about deadlines and responsibilities and stuff. So it was only really after I'd had children and my mum's passing, I came back to poetry. I came home to poetry properly, and it became part of this evolving journey of self-discovery and I'm finding my place in the world again. And it's been such a gift. It's such a gift. It really is. I've met the most amazing people through it, including your lovely self. I feel like, I've found my tribe finally. So.
And if you want to find your tribe, like we have, come and join us at Girls on Key. It really is, an experience.
Special
and I don't know how it really happened, but it's a place where you can connect with other women poets, and it really is really special. And I think having that community when you're often running on your own and your own world and your own event,
extraordinary experience.
You do find your tribe, you really do.
Absolutely.
And so just a little note here. So just a couple of things before we finish. So I just wanted to talk to you a bit about the cover because it's a fascinating picture. You've got the kind of electric fiery side, and you've got talk to us about the cover and how that.
Okay, so the title came from this ekphrastic poem which I read. It was the first poem I read, Where the Lost Things Go. And that poem sort of emerged from, as I was pulling poems together, I realized it was all about these lost places and people and traditions. And I was putting them here, so it was somewhere that I could come back to them and also, you know, so I wouldn't lose them, but also so I can share them with other people, and it can jog their own memories of those kind of almost sacred experiences in their lives.
Yeah.
And that's my
That's
hope,
really beautiful.
is that, and on the cover there's this empty boat, which is really like about the displacement of the immigrant, which is so strong in my life, and also about the journey. So this whole book is a journey through life and the transformational experiences you go through. You know, the experience of motherhood is in here, of loss, of being a child, and then leaving that place and coming back and finding, well, the place you grew up is no longer there.
Yeah.
You know, so there is this lostness, and I think that's beautifully portrayed in the cover. But one of the most important things, and there's the fire of my politics,
Yeah, there you go.
or the spark of the heart, maybe. And up here,
The
the seagull is a real muse for me, having watched the seagulls swooping over the cliffs near my home growing up, and just every time I would watch them rise and swoop, my heart would follow them, and so that was really beautiful that it was able to be in the cover, and
that's
that's
the
thanks to Siobhan Hudson at Salmon Poetry. She did an awesome job.
Shout out.
And can I just say, Jessie Landeni, who's the managing director of Salmon Poetry, is the most extraordinary woman.
Really?
Over 30 years she's supported Irish women
Fantastic.
poets incredibly, and I'm just so lucky to be part of their family.
That's gorgeous. And we'll put a link to their stuff as well in the description, so you guys can check them out if you haven't heard of them before. Thank you for that. That was really, and you get to hear the whole story behind for you guys when you get your copies. And so just lastly, for any book club readers, which is you guys, what do you want to tell them? What insights do you want to give? Anything else that you want to sort of the secrets behind the scenes of the...
What a wonderful opportunity to let you inside my head, the scary place. No, thank you, Anna. I think this is such an amazing idea. I really love what you're doing. So some things that nobody else really knows that I'd like to share with you in reading the book. Firstly, this book is full of secrets. In between these covers,
That's exciting.
are intimate moments, sacred moments, and personal discoveries. And it's my soul laid there, which is a really scary thing.
How precious is that?
But it's also, you know, I hope that it jogs things for other people, and that you find your sacred memories and moments through it.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
And I hope that that's something you could talk about in book club as well. Like, what did it make you think of in your life? The collection also, a little known fact, can be read as a kind of a story from start to finish. So almost like a novel. So from the first poem, reading consecutively to the end, there's kind of an evolution of my journey, and then circling back on itself. And I'm really curious to see if that makes sense to other people, you know, because that was certainly my intention. Also, there are intertwining threads through the collection there are cross-references between poems.
Some beautiful motifs as we talked
little
about.
threads.
Yeah, the seagull.
And, you know, a line here that then you go, oh, that's that person.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I love that, because the different context brings it out in a different way.
That's
that
right.
motif and
Giving
music.
a different perspective
It
on the
colours
same
it. Yeah,
scene.
that's right. Yeah.
So I'm so glad you got that. So like there's lots of those, and I think, you know, I'm told that when you find those, you go aha. It's an aha moment. So I hope you get those in there. And I'd also like to say, you know, please look beyond the obvious, because this is really, you know, true to Irish writing tradition. If you look closely, you'll find double and multiple or hidden meanings, not just in individual poems, but in particular lines, titles, words, and in poem sequences. And even in the form that I've chosen, the shape of certain poems, how it sits on the page, there's often a message in that. And you'll find more of these anomalies if you actually listen to the poem. You know, maybe if one of the book club members reads the poem out loud to the group, you may find in hearing the poems, you'll wonder, Was that the word I intended, or was it the homophone, or was both?
There you go. I love that. There's so much design behind it. I love that.
I hope that people have fun decoding it.
Oh, they will, I'm sure.
It was so fun writing it.
And you're like, I'll put this like Easter eggs when they talk about Easter eggs in movies and planting little treasure hunts. So there's a treasure hunt for you guys. Thank you so much, Anne. That's just been such a beautiful privilege to have you here in your own home. So I'm here in your home as a guest. But
truly honoured. Thank you so much.
That's okay.
Amazing initiative, as is everything you're doing. You're an absolute powerhouse for poetry, and particularly, obviously, women poets.
Thank you.
So I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. And so just to finish, what we're going to do, if you are the first book club to sign up with Anne's book, you're going to get signed copies. So we're going to get her to sign all your copies, 5 or more people to make a club, and fill out the form below, and we'll send them out to you. So that's really exciting. I'm sure that I hope that you're as excited as I am, because I think it's just such a fabulous treasure, that book. And you guys will be able to have fun decoding, doing your treasure hunt, and and one other little competition. If you want to respond to Anne's work, with anything that she said in the interview, or a poem, or the cover, we're going to have a little bit of a competition. So there's going to be a link below if you want to respond through art or through a poem, and then we'll send you a signed copy of Anne's book. So that's very exciting. So please do enter that, and please comment, ask questions and below, and subscribe if you're looking to see our Monday video pop up in your feed. So our next poet, we'll let you know who that's going to be, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, guys. Hey guys, so today we have a very special interview with poet and friend Anne Carson. Not Anne Carson.
Hi, I'm not Anne Carson. You can do the outtakes.